Deputy Prime Minister, the Honorable Eugene Hamilton, Attorney General, the Honorable Vincent Byron, the Honorable Wendy Phipps, Honorable Akila Byron Nisbet, Ambassador Michael Powell, Permanent Secretary Mr. Osmond Petty, other senior government officials, good afternoon and welcome to this Cabinet press conference on Wednesday, the 29th of June, 2022. I also extend a special welcome to the media who is present here. I now invite the Honorable Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris, to enter.
Good afternoon, representatives of the media. Allow me to recognize the members of the Cabinet, His Excellency Ambassador Michael Powell, senior officials of the government. Fellow citizens and residents, in keeping with our good governance agenda, I take this opportunity to update you on matters of national importance. This summer is shaping up to be a challenging one, of hurricanes, surging inflation in the United States of America, Canada, and Europe, our traditional source markets for goods and services. We also face uncertainty regarding the developments relating to COVID-19, and now monkeypox has been found in St. Lucia. Speaking of the deadly COVID-19 pandemic, the United Kingdom has entered the fifth wave, with experts warning of imminent surges in cases. The Associated Press is reporting that the number of COVID-19 related deaths increased globally by 4% up to June. With the high uncertainty in the global economy, it is clear that our country needs competent and proven leadership now and in the future to weather the storm. Our people must do all that they can to protect themselves and avoid chaos and confusion, which will only set us backwards. I am pleased to report that we continue to experience a reduction in incidents of crime in St. Kitts and Nevis. Recent data reflect a further drop in criminal activity in the country. For the period 1st January to 25th June 2022, 697 incidents of crime were reported. This represents a 2% reduction in crimes over the corresponding period in 2021, when there were 714 incidents reported. I extend commendation to all our security agencies and their contribution to this reduction. Our country is safer than at any other time in the last 25 years. My government will continue to invest in our security infrastructure. In this regard, I am pleased to advise that major renovation works are to commence at the Charlestown Police Station, and this is estimated to cost around $2.2 million. Additionally, I am advised that over the last 7 years, we have spent $67 million on the operations of our security forces on the island of Nevis. In the face of significant global risks, my government continues to manage well, protect the poor and vulnerable in our society. Our income support program, and this is a program which pays $1,000 monthly to those displaced as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our income support program continues to provide assistance to many who were displaced by COVID-19 and who continue to be. The Ministry of Finance is reporting that 3,120 persons have benefited from this program for the year so far, with $7.8 million paid out in 2022. I repeat that. The Ministry of Finance is reporting that 3,120 persons have benefited from this program for the year so far, with $7.8 million being paid out so far in 2022. Taking into considerations payouts in 2021, the accumulated total payout for 21 and 22 is in the region of $15.8 million. My government has also paid out $398,000 in disability support to 158 beneficiaries, and that is for 2022 so far. In 2021, a total of $486,500 was paid to beneficiaries under the Disability Support Program, bringing the accumulated total payout for 2021 and 2022 to date to $884,500. The Disability Support Program is a program by which we pay families with children or persons with disabilities $600 monthly. These are significant efforts by my administration to help families cope during these difficult times. Additionally, my government has paid $439,700 in fuel subsidy to 224 beneficiaries in 2022. Under the fuel subsidy program, the Ministry of Finance is reporting some 105 beneficiaries in 2021 were paid a total of $129,800. The accumulated total to date under the fuel subsidy is $569,500. The significant difference in the payouts for 2022 and 2021 is due in part to our budgetary proposal in which we extended the fuel subsidy to operators of taxi services. Before, the program was being paid principally to those who would be driving the public transport bus with an H number plate. In pursuing a policy of mitigating the cost of living, we were mindful that many families had yet to recover from the effects of COVID-19, and a critical part of our 2022 budget approved by the Parliament involved the extension of several elements of relief to our people. The elements of relief are consistent with our efforts to protect our people from the rising cost of living caused by forces external to us, like the Russian-Ukraine war, which has triggered a shortage of energy, agricultural inputs, food, etc., and subsequent high prices. My government has responded to bring relief to our people and ease their hardship. The following cost of living measures have been taken to help consumers and to protect the poor and vulnerable. 1. We have waived the payments for consumption of water for individuals who have been laid off or have experienced a reduction in earnings as a consequence of COVID-19. 2. We have waived the payments for the consumption of water by farmers, that is to boost the agricultural sector. We have removed VAT and import duty from selected hygiene items. This is to allow us to better respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. We removed the import duty and customs service charge on selected items, including vegetables, fruits, fruit juices, cough and cold preparations, and vitamin supplements. We reinstated the annual import duty exemption for 16 tires, 4 pairs of brake pads, and 3 pairs of brake shoes for 8 passenger buses. We reintroduced the duty-free allowance by non-commercial importers for a 6-month period ending September 2022. We reduced the remaining duties and taxes on the ingredients required for the production of the $2 bread for a period of 6 months. This was a specific response to demands of the bakers to increase the cost of bread. And the government took the position that we will not support an increase in the cost of what we consider the basic bread bought by the majority of people, that is the $2 bread. And so as part of the negotiations, we conceded duties and taxes on the ingredients to produce the bread. We placed an 8-month cap on the freight cost that is used in the calculation of duties and taxes that are paid on the importation of goods for the 20 and 40-foot dry and reefer containers. Again, this was an effort at cost containment, recognizing that the cost of transportation was rising significantly. The government sought to use an average pricing mechanism reflecting freight costs for over a period of time to contain the add-on effects of taxes on the cost of the importation of goods. Perhaps Minister Phipps will speak a little bit to this measure. Of course, since 2020, we have taken the decision to reduce corporate income tax from 33% to 25%. That still remains in effect. And the tax for unincorporated businesses is at 2%, down from 4%. The cost of fuel continues to be a challenge. What has the government done? The government reduced the excise tax on fuel from $2.25 to 95 cents. Significant reduction. In other words, we gave up tax revenue in order to contain the cost of fuel. Additionally, we have continued and expanded our poverty alleviation program, SAFE, SELF, and other social safety net and welfare programs. Indeed, the Ministry of Social Development have reported that for the year so far, it has exhausted its budget of support and is seeking additional revenues. In other words, There is no want of generosity on the part of the government in helping those who are most vulnerable, poor, and in need. I won't go into the details again of our income support program, our disability support program, and the fuel subsidy programs have all been mentioned before. Specifically, we were concerned that too many persons had had their electricity cut, and the cabinet determined that we will put an end to this denial of electricity to residential consumers. And so we place a hold or moratorium on the payment of electricity arrears, and we have in fact waived the fee for the reconnection of electricity, all with a view to our people getting again lights in their home. We could not continue the policy of putting families in darkness. The shame and agony surrounding this were not consistent with the compassionate society my government encourages. Another important issue of concern has to do with the matter of water. My government continues to deliver for the people, and in particular our plans to solve the perennial water problems in our country are being actioned. And I want to thank the new Minister for Public Infrastructure, the Honourable Jean Hamilton, whose task it now is to ensure we have a quicker follow-through of actions on these critical matters. This, of course, is not a new project. Since December 2020, my government signed a contract with BEAD, LLC, to undertake a groundwater development project. The project had two main parts. One, to remedy the water quality of Shadwell number 2 well, and two, to drill a new well at Keon. The site was already identified through previous exploration work. Given the recent water shortage, our water department has determined that well drilling at Keon is more of a priority than remedying the well at Shadwell. It is recommended that BEAD not only complete the well in Keon, but also drill in the following areas: Lodge, Molyneux, Phillips, Sadlers, Deepbay, Parsons, and Newton Gown. We will also advance water availability by constructing desalination plants. An adequate and safe water supply is one of the most basic infrastructure on which our socio-economic development rests. This matter cannot be postponed, as the health and well-being of our country rests on our moving quickly to solve all water problems. The dramatic increase in the cost of fossil fuel energy has reinforced the need for us to move ahead with plans to secure safer, cleaner, and more reliable energy resources. St. Kitts and Nevis will lead the way with the build-out of our solar farm. When completed, we expect the cost of electricity to be significantly reduced and also experience a higher reliability of energy supply. My government has responded with compassion to the pleas of the residential customers to do something to ease the pressure of electricity costs on their livelihoods. And specifically, I think I mentioned this before, we instituted a hold on the arrears of electricity bills. In other words, we are asking that people pay the current portion of their bills. Those who can afford to pay the arrears, they are free to do so. But we are concerned that people keep current with their bills and that the burden of the arrears is no longer a cause for disconnection. So we have put a freeze on the disconnection of persons provided they pay the current portion of their bills. And as I said earlier, the reconnection fee has now been waived for the time being. Our citizens and residents can rest assured that the astute financial management of our country continues. The focused, competent leadership of our country continues. I would now want to invite those members of the Cabinet to make brief interventions at this time, and then we will entertain any questions from the media.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister. Good afternoon to our local media houses, those who are here in person, and those who are joining us online. I wanted to use this brief opportunity to present a short statement on the recently concluded St. Kitts Music Festival. The festival would have been convened from June 23rd to 25th in St. Kitts, and it would have been the 24th edition of the music festival, and it constituted a return to the festival lifestyle, midsummer lifestyle of St. Kitts and Nevis, following a 2-year hiatus that would have been COVID-related, because the last music festival would have been held in 2019. A detailed report, I should state, on the music festival will be provided by the Music Festival Committee, headed by Mr. Damian Hobson, early in the month of July. There's normally a practice of staging an exit press conference, which would provide a complete assessment on the income and expenditure of the music festival, in addition to the attendance over the 3 nights. However, what I can indicate to you are the following provisional figures, conservatively stated, based on attendance over the 3 nights. And I would add a caveat when I'm done. For Thursday night, there would have been an attendance averaging 4,000, Friday 4,500, and Saturday 6,700. I said it is with a caveat, meaning that the figures that are associated with the attendance in the 4 private boxes are not included in this figure. Those private boxes, in between the 4 of them, would normally average anywhere between 1,500 to 1,700 extra persons. So those figures are being worked on, and by the time the exit press conference is done, the final figures would be presented. By extension, the expenditure related to the music festival is currently being tabulated. We do have a number of invoices that are outstanding, and as such, I'm using this opportunity to encourage those persons who have outstanding invoices that should be turned in to the Ministry of Tourism, the SKTA Music Festival Committee, to do so that we can make the remittances, as is the practice of the SKTA and the Music Festival, to do so in a timely manner. I should also indicate that during the course of the festival, we would have had anecdotal evidence from a number of hotel properties in terms of the occupancy rates. They were relatively high, in particular for the Marriott, the Royal St. Kitts, and Koi Resort. And by extension, we will hope to be providing an updated figure on that by the time the exit press conference is convened. However, I wanted to use this opportunity to extend, on behalf of the Federal Cabinet, the gratitude of the Cabinet for the hundreds of volunteers who would have made the music festival possible. Every single staging of the music festival cannot take place without the work of volunteers, and there were quite a number of them that would have put their shoulders to the wheel and would have made it possible for us to restart the music festival in what I consider to be grand, high-class fashion. We also thank all of the vendors who would have worked hard to ensure that the festival was a success. There were some 8 to 10 booths that would have been available for vendors, as well as a section for small vendors and also persons who were selling crafts, as you would have entered the stadium using the access staircase from the Bird Rock basketball field. One of the hallmarks, as I indicated, of the festival is the whole issue of settlement of bills on time. So again, I'm asking persons who would have had bills outstanding to please turn them in. At the same time, I should also indicate that a post-mortem will be done on the 24th edition of the Music Festival to look at the things that we would have done well, things that could be done better, to do some benchmarking and some best practices in terms of how we compare ourselves to other major festivals, and basically for what are some of the best practices that obtain elsewhere in the world that we too could be adopting. But nevertheless, from all assessment, we can say that we delivered in terms of ensuring that the St. Kitts Music Festival's 24th edition for the year 2022 was an experience like no other, as was indicated by the slogan that would have been adopted. So I just wanted to share that small bit of information with us, and also to indicate too that in terms of budget support for the St. Kitts Music Festival, during the budget period and ultimately when we would have approved the budget in Parliament in December of 2021, the sum of approximately 2.4 million would have been allocated for the expenditure related to the music festival. Of course, as I indicated earlier, the income statement from the music festival will be forthcoming. What I can also indicate to you is that as of perhaps last Tuesday, when we would have had the last meeting of the COVID-19 task force, it would have been reported that up until that day, at least 4,000 plus tickets had been sold based on general admission tickets alone. So I just wanted to bring that brief summary in terms of where we are with the music festival.
Thank you, Chair, and also thank you for, in your presentation, covering some of the areas. So it gives me an opportunity to be brief. Today I want to speak briefly on the Bastia High School. As you're aware, when I took over the ministry, there was some delay taking place in providing insurance coverage for the project. As a result, nothing was happening there. So when we met here on the 1st of June, I indicated that we had had meetings, and I even described the way that the shields, the swords were put back in the shields. And so I can tell you, I have been, since that date, the 1st of June, able to obtain the certificate of insurance from the insurers, dated the 17th day of June, which opens the way for continued activity on that site. As we speak, in fact, it was only yesterday that I had a meeting with the Permanent Secretary and persons from Public Works and instructed them to take control, act as the government in delivering that project. They should not be waiting for other actors to take action or don't take action. Public Works must take the action. And so I expect from yesterday the instructions given would be followed. I know for a fact that the sign is up on the site. Hoarding should be taking place any time now. I know water is there. In fact, I did call electricity department yesterday to ensure that electricity is there. So while I can't say it's there today, certainly when I leave here, I will find out if the electricity is already there. So there should be nothing that prevents them from moving forward in terms of hoarding and then getting to the subcontractors to be able to commence that work. I understand that there are issues that local contractors may have. Those can be resolved. Those are easy matters to be resolved as far as I'm concerned. The Attorney General has advised me that they are easy to resolve. And I have come to trust his word. So that Bastia High School should get going. Then, of course, I should touch on the La Clanche Select, the solar farm issue, which we, again, were able to get moving. In fact, when we met here last time, we spoke about the meetings we had. Since then, we have had all of the documentation signed. Since then, we have had an event we called Kickoff, which brought the partners on the site to determine the way forward. The next step is on the 11th day of July, there will be a job fair at Warner Park. My understanding, if I could find it, my understanding is that some nearly 200 jobs will be available, and that there will be several different kinds of job offers there. So a person should take note that on the 11th at Warner Park, there will be a job fair. Those who are without employment, it's an opportunity for you to get involved. Different skill sets would be required. And of course, it will be an opportunity for persons to even be trained as you work along with that team. Then I should touch on SCELEC. I did say I was going to be brief, so I'm being brief on each head here. SCELEC has been having its challenges, as you heard before, within the last year or so. Surpluses or reserves that they may have had have been depleted. In fact, there have been many discussions on radio and television about this, but I will also add that one of the causes of the depletion is really the cost of electricity. And I want to speak to that, the cost of the fuel. I want to speak to that because I want to first encourage persons to be moderate, conservative in the use of the utilities that we provide from the government. Because the cost of fuel has more than doubled, and it has resulted in subsidy being provided by the government to be able to keep lights in your homes. In June alone, the government spent $9.5 million. On the 1st of June, $4.129 million. And on the 17th of June, $5.376 million. So that SCELEC can continue to provide electricity. The alternative to government providing this subsidy would be tariff increases, which means that $9 million of which I just spoke, and the month of June is not ended yet, would be tagged onto your electricity bill. So the government stepping in so far with $9 million for June alone has saved you on your bill that $9 million. I did a quick calculation, and if we use 18,000 households, I'm not saying that is the figure, if we use 18,000, that is at least $500 for the month of June alone on each of your bill. That is how the cost of fuel alone has caused our electricity. And we don't know when it's going to stop, because we still have the war in Ukraine, and we do not have control over the cost of fuel. Water, the Prime Minister mentioned, and I will just touch on it briefly again. As you are aware, we are in a period of drought. As we speak, we are experiencing drought, and I believe I could share with you that in April, for example, we had less than 1 inch of rain. In May, we had 1.2 inches of rain. And in June, so far, we have 0.9, less than 1 inch of rain. And as you're aware, when rain falls, it takes several weeks into months before that water gets down to the well field for you to be able to extract it. So getting rain today does not solve the water problem. We are having a challenge because the consumption of water by our residents is increasing every day. St. Kitts is growing, St. Kitts and Nevis, growing so fast, developing so fast, that the consumption of water is escalating. And as a result, we have the challenge of having to find new sources. The Prime Minister spoke about desalination. And one of the decisions we made recently was to invite the UAE to commence its program that was offered for at least a unit to provide some 30 to 60,000 gallons per day that will at least support the Keys area and relieve Cairn of some of the stress that it's under, and as well as relieving Lodge as well. Meanwhile, Cabinet further looked at other desalination proposals. Why? Because our water engineer has advised us that the demand that we have, as in the Basti area, we're having a demand which is $2 million gallons more than what we are supplying. That is why we have to look at desalination. To be able to deal with that issue, we have made contact with those who provide desalination services over in the Frigate Bay area to at least support the lower valleys in Frigate Bay. The challenge is that whereas we normally charge $7 per 1,000 gallons of water, and whereas a year ago they were willing to supply us at $15 per 1,000 gallons of water, because of the cost of fuel to produce this water, they are now offering $30 per 1,000 gallons. So you understand the impact of the fuel, of the generation services on the cost of water itself. If we are then to purchase from them at $30 and we are selling to customers at $7, you understand that the government is actually subsidizing. These are some of the challenges which we face. Meanwhile, we continue to look at proposals before us. There's a BRICO proposal before us. They have proposed since 2016 to be able to provide us with a plan to produce 3 million gallons per day. And we have engaged them, as we have engaged others, because government, of course, has a process of procurement which we are not ignoring. We as a government, we are not doing things that are convenient for any event that is taking place in the next month or two. We are doing it because people are out of water and there are demands on the supply that we currently provide. So that we're looking at those desalination projects, and then I'm sure that we may make decisions that create an opportunity for an acceleration of the installation of these plants. And I trust that, and I know that we will have the full support of the country, because you are the ones, I am one, whose home is sometimes without water when evening comes. And I have heard persons complaining, and I know it is a challenge. So it's something that we are addressing frontally as we speak. Then, of course, I have the St. Peter's Health Center. I have to speak to that one because I don't want to go into too much health issues, but let's face it. St. Peter's is the largest and fastest growing community in the state. It had, before that growth taking place, had the largest number of persons attending clinics. It is a clinic provided there that is really has deteriorated over the years. A project commenced there in 2020, round about July. It was scheduled to be completed, that is a new health center, scheduled to be completed September last year. Somewhere around May, June, it came to a halt. It came to a stop. And from that time until now, it had not progressed. Since I became the minister, I have started the work to make sure it is progressing so that we could complete that facility to provide the services that are needed in St. Peter's in particular, but on the country on a whole. Let me say that it was just yesterday when I visited with the financial secretary to make sure that the consultant whom we hired to evaluate the project as it is, that the consultant is paid so that we can be engaged, and within 7 days, as the consultant has promised, he will be able to provide the kind of report for us to make the decision going forward. I expect that after that report, both the government and the contractor will come to some agreement, or we will move in a different direction. That I cannot report on now, except to say that that health center has to be completed. I cannot have that tied up in litigation and other issues for many years to come. Then, of course, it is no secret we are hiring DLG consultants to take on this task, so that's not a secret. The final one I would like to touch on is the economy playing field, but I think I'd rather leave it because last time we were here, I mentioned that the steel fabrication on the ground, they were at the Kim Collins Stadium, and I will be working with the Attorney General to make sure that the Ministry of Sport gets that project underway. It is currently getting its final viewing by the people in finance, and once that hurdle is passed, I would expect the Connery Sporting Complex to get moving. I will leave the other issues so that you can ask questions, because I would prefer to, though politicians love to talk and I like to talk long, I think I'd leave it for you to ask questions so that I can respond. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I would want to acknowledge the presence of Cabinet colleagues at the head table and to say a pleasant good afternoon to all gathered here and those who are following us, whether by internet, TV, or on radio. As I listened to Minister Hamilton just now, it's important for me to make the following statement. On May 10th of this year, the Honourable Prime Minister advised the Governor General to dissolve the Parliament. And since then, there has been, the government has continued to function. When Parliament is dissolved, government is not put on pause. Government is continuous. Yes. And some of the things that Minister Hamilton has told us, if there was no government in place to manage this, we may well have been in darkness, yes, because we have had to find emergency payments for electricity to keep the generation going. There are serious matters of water shortages that need to be addressed, and a myriad of other things that come every day, that there needs to be authorities in place to ensure that the people of our federation continue to live properly, that there's stability in our country. Just to be very clear, the government continues to function. It functions within the Constitution, within the ambit, the four walls of the law. We live as a country under the rule of law, and the Constitution is our supreme law. And everything done has been done in accordance with the law, and we will continue to do so. Just to reiterate, on the May 10th, Parliament was dissolved. And according to our Constitution, once the Parliament is dissolved, a general election must be held within 90 days. Not at any day that somebody calls for it to be held during that period. It is the prerogative of the Prime Minister to advise the Governor General when to have the poll taken. It must be taken within that 90 days from the May 10th. And I just want to emphasize that, to say that we continue to function and function properly. It would be unheard of if we had to postpone or put Music Festival on pause. This is something that had been arranged time ago, as has been the solar farm, has been other things that are happening every day. We continue to function for the good of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis within the law. I want briefly then to turn to some of the portfolios that I have under my purview, and I'd just like to start by speaking to Justice and Legal. We have had to close the courthouse building as a Lee Llewellyn Moore Judicial Complex. We had been advised that the air quality was poor, and we have had to remove our staff from there. They function remotely and in shift while we prepare to move to the CNC building. And at the moment, according to the procurement laws, we have some 3 or 4 contractors who are preparing, put in tenders for us to establish temporary courts in the CNC building as well as the registry of the High Court. In the meantime, we have established a temporary court at the Police Training Court where criminal matters are being heard by the judge and jury. And so the courts continue to function, and we hope that that will be resolved shortly. Quickly, I turn to education, and I would like to commend the early childhood director and her staff and all who look after our young kids. We are still in the month of the early childhood month, and we have had a series of activities to celebrate and to emphasize the work of our young children. I was privileged and honored to participate in what is a high point of the month on Friday last with a march to celebrate these youngsters as we walk through the town of Bastille, much with the support of their parents and teachers and others who look after them and prepare us, the young kids, for the future of our country. I'd like to mention that in terms of the Department of Youth, as we come to the end of the school year, our students are taking exams at all levels of the school, overseas exams. We wish them all well. We encourage the parents to support their kids and to ensure that they prepare properly for these exams. When school ends, we note that the Department of Youth intends or has planned a summer youth camp at the Beach Island Primary School, where we expect to have some 200 youngsters between the ages of 9 and 16 participate in the residential camp at that school. I would like also to just quickly speak to the question of sports. As I said, government is continuing, and all the activities that have been planned for and which we welcome here in St. Kitts will continue. We in the Ministry of Sports, the Department of Sports, have to prepare, as it were, the Warner Park Cricket Stadium, as we welcome India and the West Indies on August the 1st and August the 2nd in 2 international matches, T20 matches. The 2nd and 3rd T20 matches of the India Tour of the Caribbean will be held here at Warner Park on August the 1st, August Monday, and August the 2nd. And we also look forward to later that month to have CPL here in St. Kitts. St. Kitts will host the bulk of the CPL matches this year. Some 31 matches will be held in Warner Park. In addition to the traditional T20 matches with the various teams, Go Patriots, we will also have, for the first time, the inaugural Women's Caribbean Premier League with different teams coming here to participate. And in addition to that, for the first time ever, there'll also be the exciting T10, 10 overs a side, a match, that will be also held at Warner Park. So we look forward to an exciting period of sports, international sports, that will be held here in St. Kitts over the next few weeks. And with that, I would like to just say that we welcome any questions as we go forward. Thank you very much.
Those are the interventions we will have at this time, and so we are open for questions from the media.
Good afternoon, everyone. Devon Cornelius, WinFM. Just a few questions. Firstly, when will the Ministry of Health or the Cabinet lift the travel entry protocols that would require passengers or inbound passengers to apply for entry? Secondly, multiple reports allege that non-nationals with newly issued St. Kitts Nevis passports are being brought into the country for the purpose of voter padding. As Minister of National Security, what is your office doing in response to these allegations? And lastly, with regards to the prison project, questions over the approval process, the timelines of the project, the costs to develop, and the impact the project will have on the wider society. Please provide us with, or to the best of your knowledge, the genesis of the prison project, its funding stages, how it will be financed, who ultimately benefits from the construction in regards to jobs. And recently the number of, or the cost of 2.2 billion has been publicly discussed and objected. What is the real cost of the prison project? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Calabar, ZZ Broadcasting Corporation. Just two questions. What steps are being taken to address the concerns of ECHO regarding the music festival and its licenses? And there are some treaties that St. Kitts and Nevis has not signed on to, including the Beijing Treaty on Audiovisual Performances, the Singapore Treaty on the Law of Trademarks, and others. Are there any plans being put in place to sign these treaties to protect our creatives in the visual space?
Your last question, Ms. Burridge, please.
There are some treaties that St. Kitts and Nevis has not signed on to as yet. The question is, are there plans being put in place to sign these treaties to protect the creatives in the digital space?
Okay. In relation to the matters of health, we have our CMO and our Dr. Wilkinson also, who is here. So they will attend to that matter. We have Permanent Secretary Mr. Osmond Petty, and he has oversight over the issuance of passports. I'll let him speak to that matter. And then, with respect to the CBI, I will have Lescan speak to that. But just to say, generally, what you have here is a lot of propaganda, hot air, with no meaning, and no real rationale to them. The two persons who are leading in questioning the new correctional facility were two senior members of the cabinet who sat, considered the documentation presented by the technical team at Skipper and the CIU. In fact, at one of the sitting of the cabinet, Lescan, the CEO, was there, and I think Mrs. Freights. Questions were asked and answered. And everyone in the cabinet approved the project. In other words, the project met the best and most vigorous standards for approval, and there was no objection, not one dissenting voice. The project came again for the issue of concessions, again approved, all present consenting. There was nothing abnormal about the project. And the two ex-ministers gave full support to them. It is therefore surprising at the level of dishonesty that is being showed by these two ex-ministers of the government in now raising questions over matter which they themselves approve. They were there, they approved them, nothing was wrong. The normal processes were followed, and the decision was put for the cabinet to be made by the cabinet based on advice of the technical team. Every matter in relation to the CBI program goes to the cabinet for policy, clarity, elucidation, and development. That is how things are done under the Harris administration. So we have nothing to be concerned about with respect to the new correctional facility. And why should I explain the need for a new correctional facility? When going back since 2000, that has been in the public domain. Dwyer Asterman, for example, when he was Minister of National Security, indicated that he had proposed a CBI program to build out the infrastructure given the high level of dilapidation he had inherited from Denzel Douglas when he assumed the portfolio for national security, and it was turned down. One of the matters which Astefan claimed he wanted to address was a new correctional facility. In his budget address for 2012 and 2013, and I have copies of them here, Dr. Douglas spelled out the rationale for the new facility. He spoke in part about, let me get this quote correct. He said at paragraph 110 of his budget address, the ministry will continue to advance plans to erect a new prison facility in the near future. This facility will have the capacity to house 400 inmates and will go a long way to ease the present overcrowding situation at the main prison. That was Denzel Douglas speaking in his budget address presented to the country in 2012 for the financial year 2013. Again, in 2012, he made similar reference to this prison. It's just that he couldn't get it off the ground. He couldn't finance it. So in 2012, speaking on Tuesday, the 13th December 2011, Dr. Douglas said, as early as 2006, my government had identified safety and security as the focal sector to be financed utilizing resources from the 10th EDF. We have now completed the approval process and will implement the initiative over a 3-year period starting in January of 2012. This program will complement our anti-crime strategy as it focuses on areas such as institutional strengthening and the construction of a new police training facility and prisoner rehabilitation sector. These initiatives, according to Douglas, are intended to place our police at the top spectrum of advanced policing and, of course, provide the opportunity for those who are on the wrong side of crime to reform themselves for the greater good of their communities and the society at large. So the justification for it superseded my administration and goes all the way, if we believe Dr. Denzel Douglas, since 2006 he was working to get the financing for it. And if we believe Dwyer Rastafan, way back I think it was in 2004, he said, entertained the idea of getting through the CBI funding for the development of a correctional facility. It's almost 200 years. COVID-19 exposed the inadequacy of our prison system with the frequency in which we had the surgeries in our prison center and the inadequacy of the spacing to help with infectious prevention and even cure of infectious diseases. 10 men per cell could not cut it. And that is why we had this frequency, and our numbers basically tripled in some instances once the COVID-19 had spread in our prisons. So the rationale for it needs no justification, because government, administration after administration made the case for it. What is new is that the Harris administration has come up with a way forward for financing. It is a program called the Alternative Investment Option under the CBI program that is being used to finance it. The government could not finance it. A private party, a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis to the economic citizenship route, came forward with a proposal to finance the construction of the prison. And the government agreed. Mark Brantley agreed. Sean Richards agreed to the proposal. And all elements of the proposal were in the cabinet document prepared by Director Freites after consultation and signed by me, because only ministers can sign documents to go forward to the cabinet for discussion. Every one of them agreed with it, because it was a way to get what was necessary done without any burden. This $2 billion story is just that, a story. It has no meaning. It has no meaning. For the record, this facility will cost the taxpayer of St. Kitts and Nevis not 1 cent. There is no cost to the country of building it. We are not investing in it. We will own it when the construction of it is completed. What we have paid so far, we paid Stacey Hobson just over $2 million for developing the design of the prison. And we insisted that the developer will build the prison in accordance with the specifications developed and approved by the building board. That is what we did. We insisted that developer must be able to start the project even before one share was sold. The developer is one of the, I would say, most efficient and effective, because that developer, a citizen of St. Kitts Nevis and also a citizen of China, has delivered a Ramada hotel of 300 rooms. In other words, they have a record of delivery in St. Kitts and Nevis. They have resources. They are a big player in the market. Not 1 cent this will cost the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. It is something well needed to satisfy our own concept of human decency, how our people should live, where they should stay, and what conditions we consider acceptable. And it is well known that the human rights body, when they have come and visited our prison, gave us low marks because of the overcrowding. And so the beneficiary of this project would be the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, who will have a prison facility built at no cost to the taxpayer. And let us be very clear that the construction of the prison does not compete with the government being able to do any other capital project, because one, the money for it is not coming out of the treasury. No costs, not 1 cent. And that is why I say we don't get ourselves lost in the nonsense being spoken by dishonest Mark Brantley and dishonest Sean Richards at this particular moment in time. The further point to be made is that that particular project and every share that is sold will bring about $50,000 into the treasury, plus due diligence fees. So rather than taking money out, it will bring millions of dollars over the life of the project. And those millions coming into the project now will help us to deal with the problem at the judiciary, which the Honorable AG made reference to. It will help us to improve the services at our JNF hospital. It will help us to build roads. It will help us to launch the largest housing construction program in St. Kitts and Nevis in a lifetime. It will help us to build out our public infrastructure. No downside to it for the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. The downside is in the lazy minds of those who are now criticizing it. No downside to it. And so that is the story of the CBI. But it brings me to make a more fundamental point, that the CBI program has now emerged as the single largest generator of revenue for our country. Why then would 2 upstart ex-ministers engage in undermining it, when one of them has laid his claim to fame and wanting a fair share? So he's destroying it, the very vehicle on which he wants to rely to be able to do things for the people of Nevis. It doesn't make sense. It's an irrational approach by those who want to lead the country. And our people must be very mindful of dishonest politicians who would say anything and go to any extreme to score cheap political points. They know what they are saying is nonsense. They know it. And persons in the media need to investigate, get the information, and make sure the information is made available to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis and the wider region. One of my colleagues called me and he said, I am concerned over those foolish statements being made by Mark Brantley and Sean Richards. I said, don't bother with that, man. People here not take. He said, you all may not be taking it on, but it's affecting all our CBI programs in the region, because people are seeing us as what? The Caribbean region with about 5 CBI programs: Grenada, Antigua, St. Lucia, St. Kitts, and Nevis, and Dominica. And so when you criticize one, they lump us. They see these as shortcomings in the program. We are now considered the platinum brand. We have come a long way from 2014, when Dr. Denzel Douglas basically mashed up the reputation of our CBI program, destroy any goodwill in the international community. It was in May 2014 when the Treasury Department, FinCEN, took a decision to lay a charge against St. Kitts and Nevis, accused the Denzel Douglas administration of allowing illicit actors to participate in the program. Mogadam and all of these. It was in November of 2014 that the government of Canada took the hard and painful decision to withdraw visa-free access to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis on account of its displeasure with the management of the CBI program under Denzel Douglas. And it said it had no confidence in the Douglas administration. The Douglas administration then was doing all kind of ridiculous things with the passport, taking out the country of birth field so that persons could conceal the identity. It was going against the grain cardinal principles for the issuance of passport. And the two most powerful countries in our hemisphere reprimanded the administration and hurt us. So many people now have to struggle to get into Canada, who otherwise would have just bought their ticket, gone to Canada as easy, except for price, as if they were going to Jamaica, Antigua, or any other member states of the region. We have come a long way from that because we reformed the program. We improved the due diligence. We work with our international stakeholders. We traveled the entire globe in the first set of meetings. I walked with the Attorney General, went to London, meet the important people in the government of the United Kingdom. We went to Dubai, met with important stakeholders, began the process of rebuilding confidence. And now 2 persons, former members, ex-members of the cabinet, who should know better, is telling a lot of untruths and spreading misinformation which they know will not hold up. The man who helped us to reform the CBI is here. He's Lescan, and I would invite him to add any comment on this particular matter. But as far as this costing $2 billion, that is only in the head of those who are propagating this nonsense. Not $1 of the taxpayer money will be required to construct this new facility. And you ask me who will benefit? We have about 3, 4 different contractors out there. They are benefiting. You ask me who will benefit? It is TDC who is benefiting. It is Horsford who is benefiting. It's all the workers who have found work there on site. And in the other establishments that are supplying materials and other products of need, they are the ones who are benefiting from the project. And the country, of course, will benefit because we are going to see a boon in the construction activity of the country as a result of the prison being built over the next perhaps 2 years or thereabout. So there are no downside to us. Mr. Lescan.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Good afternoon. Prime Minister actually made all the relevant points, but I'd like to reiterate a few. the prison project and the alternative investment option was created to have a two-pronged benefit to the country. One, as the Prime Minister mentioned, is an asset that is privately funded and gets transferred over to the state when it's completed. The second is the creation of revenue that will be put into the consolidated fund as sales in the shares or units of investments, as we call it, are sold. These units of investments under the alternative investment option for the correctional facility is scheduled, if all the units are sold, will be hundreds of millions of dollars over the next 2 to 3 years. This is a significant impact on the economy and to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Now, the numbers being bantered around of $2.2 billion, I think we need to break it down. 2.2 billion EC dollars. How did people come up with that number? It's made up specifically by the number of units investments that they assume that have been granted, times the price of 175,000. So if you take, let's say, 5,000 units of investment times 175, convert it into EC, you will get $2.2 billion. To be specific, what the developer gets is not $2.2 billion. What the developer gets is what he can sell in the market at whatever price there is in the market. In the market, we're competing with the likes of Dominica and the other Caribbean islands and even other programs outside of the Caribbean. And whatever price is there is what the developer will compete at and offer his units of investment. These prices, or the 175,000 that will be the face value, which is the government's price, has to be discounted or commissions paid to agents out there who are very aggressive. The clients or potential investors know the price that St. Kitts is competing against Dominica or St. Lucia or Grenada, Antigua, and that price number goes down to what the developer actually receives. And this happens in the alternative investment option and also in the real estate market under standard real estate. So we're in constant competition against a price structure that is not necessarily the face value of what we have to offer. But we have to allow the developer to be able to complete his or her construction. Despite the price being offered in the marketplace, the government or the developer has to pay the government on an average $50,000 into the coffers. So this is very specific. That $50,000 comes straight into the consolidated fund, and as the Prime Minister mentioned, is used in an array of areas. We did go through a rigorous process in determining well, first of all, we had to change the legislation in order to allow infrastructure projects to be included under the CBI program. And that infrastructure project proposal started in early of 2021. Before any project was put forward, we discussed it, we proposed it, and it was discussed in cabinet, and legislation was passed. SROs were passed to legislate the alternative investment option. So when a project came along that we felt fitted the criteria of what was legislated, obviously that was put to cabinet again. So there was rigor around what we did. There's another point I need to reiterate here, and that is there is oversight over this project. The project is not just being willy-nilly managed by the developer. There are members of government agencies involved in project management and oversight of the timelines of this project. I have seen a project plan and I have seen delivery dates that take us into 2023. I have also seen the cost of construction. Originally, there was the proposal that there was the suggestion that the project was going to cost about $40 million US. That's about 100 million EC dollars. And based on COVID and the cost of materials and so on, that number has actually increased to about 50 million US dollars from what I'm being told. Another point to note is that under the current, where we are in construction, at least 200 locals have been employed to date. And it's expected that by the end of this year, there will be about 1,000 locals employed in the construction of the prison. So I just wanted to elaborate on these points. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister.
Thank you. We will now hear from Mr. Petty in relation to persons coming in with our passports.
Good afternoon. I will speak on 2 points. First of all, my office has no information whatsoever about undue numbers of persons coming into the country, from non-nationals coming into the country with St. Kitts and Nevis passports. The Immigration Department has not reported any such thing to me. We have not seen anyone who should not have a passport entering the country. And most non-nationals who have come to St. Kitts come with a passport from their own country. Now let me say, all of us here, most of us here would have traveled. Many of us would have had passports. It is not unusual for somebody to have a new passport. People get passports, they don't use them for a year or two. When they travel, it is still looking new. It does not mean that they just got the passport. There may be, for example, someone in the DR, Dominican Republic, who is a national, is a citizen by marriage, and who got a passport a year, 2 years ago, and is just using it, the passport look new. That doesn't mean that somebody just gave them a passport last week. So the first point I want to make is that we have no information whatsoever. I must mention here that I heard a voice note going around about 71 persons coming in with the passports from St. Kitts and Nevis on Saturday. And I should say here, even though there was a press release, that on Saturday 6 persons came into this country with passports from Haiti. And they had Haitian passports, and they had visas to come to St. Kitts, 6. And so these type of sensational statements are really uncalled for and misleading. The second thing I want to say before I sit is, how do we process a passport here in St. Kitts? And I am 99.99% sure that no one can generate a passport very easily from our passport office. Normally it takes 3 persons to process a passport. In an emergency situation, the supervisor and 1 other can do the passport. But normally, the normal process is for 3 persons to process 1 passport. The passports, when they come in, and all our passports are supervised, controlled from the Canadian banknote, which is based in Canada. The passports, when they come in, they're locked away. To get into the passport, to remove any passport, the supervisor and our CBN trained technician, both of them simultaneously have to go to the locker and input their passwords and codes to open it and remove passwords and remove passports. The number of passports taken out are recorded in the passport office. They're also recorded down in my office, and they are monitored and recorded at CBN in Canada. And so, if, for instance, ex-passports are taken out, then it's going to crash the system because CBN right away will realize that something has gone wrong. We can't print. And so any talk about people coming or going out with bags of passports is just foolishness. You just cannot get it done. No one person can go into the system and remove a passport, remove any number of passports. And the numbers are recorded in sequence. And if passport number 10 is printed, the next one has to be 11. If it's not 11, then CBN is going to raise an alarm, raise 11. And so I want to say to the general public and anybody who is interested that any talk about bags of passports leaving the country is real foolishness. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Petty. Did a good job on that foolishness. I want to invite the Minister of Creatives. There was a question in relation to our signing up on a number of treaties.
Thank you, PM. Yes, we are aware at the ministry that there are a number of treaties that would protect the rights of our creatives here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And since the ministry have been established, we would have reached out to Justice and Legal Affairs to determine what our position was on the treaties. The treaties that we would have requested information on would have been the Rome Convention for the protection of performers, producers of phonograms and broadcasting organization, the Beijing Treaty that you alluded to, the WIPO Copyright Treaty, the WIPO Performances and Phonograms Treaty, and the Marrakesh Treaty to facilitate access to published works for persons who are blind, visually impaired, or otherwise print disabled. We received confirmation back from Justice and Legal Affairs that indeed we have not signed those treaties, and the suggestion that we should reach out to the IPO office. We are in discussions with the Intellectual Property Office on going through the process required for us to be able to sign the treaties. It is a 10-step process that must be done in order for us to be able to sign off on these treaties, with the IPO giving us most of the guidance in terms of whether or not any of these treaties are out of line with our legislation, and if any changes that we may need to make if we can or cannot sign off on these treaties. So we are in the process of getting those treaties signed, those that we can, whatever changes need to be made, and we are in discussions with the Intellectual Property Office to ensure that we are conform with all treaties required to protect our creative sector. Thank you.
Thanks. Before I invite our CMO to speak on the question put regarding the lifting of the requirement, I want to address one other piece of misinformation that has come from those who should know better. I gather that part of the argument the mischief makers, by that I mean Mark Brantley and Sean Richards, have put, is that we are spending $2.2 billion on a prison. Again, not 1 cent on the prison. A private party is funding it. Just as, for example, a private party funded the Park Hyatt. We got a Park Hyatt hotel here, funded through the CBI program. Not 1 cent of our money was spent. And it is a similar kind of process of giving shares for things to happen in your country. Ramada was built through the CBI program, not 1 cent from the government, But people went out there, took their risks, market their project, got buyers, paid the government its due, and they did their construction. And Mark Brantley should know better. A member of the Mark Brantley's cabinet, Spencer Brand, is also a developer in the CBI program. And Spencer Brand project came to the cabinet, supported by the NIA, for us to give them shares. Is it that the government then is funding Spencer Brand project? I think it's about, what, $44 million US? Is it that the federal government will take up 109, nearly 120 million EC to fund Spencer Brand project? Or Spencer Brand will go around the world, find people, find interested people? So they understand how it works. They understand there is no cost to the government and the country, because right in their cabinet is a member participating in the program. It is really a form of foreign direct investment. In fact, among the member states, Grenada, Antigua, Dominica, and St. Kitts, the CBI program represents the largest contributor to foreign direct investment. It's people bringing in their money, being incentivized through the CBI program. That is what it is. And Brantley should know better. Brantley should know better, and it is surprising that they will go there. The other argument that they said, well, that money should have gone to deal with the water issues. What nonsense are they talking? We ain't have no problem of money, shortage for water issues. In the budget now, as we speak about the BEAD program, the drilling, $6,000 US is there. 600,000 is provided to execute that particular project. The project did not go through because Sean Richards failed in the delivery of it. That is what has happened. They are too lazy to even know what was before them. They bring the foolish argument, where rather than spend on the prison, spend on Barstow High School, but there is no competition. Over the last 7 years, we have budgeted $81.5 million to get the Barstow High School started. Again, inefficiencies. We have had 3 ministers of education, to be clear. Sean Richards, he didn't get it done. John L. Powell, he didn't get it done. And we now have the Honorable Vincent Byron working with the Minister of Public Infrastructure. And in less than, 2 months, we are moving ahead. Laziness, not a lack of funds. $81.5 million made available. That is more than you could spend. 81.5 million over the last 7 years. And those who were charged with the responsibility for delivery did not deliver. It is taking our 3rd Minister of Education, who is committed, an educator, committed to education and the Barstow High School with its rich history, to get this project going. So I want to commend the new Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Public Infrastructure and the Honorable Attorney General for getting done what couldn't be done in 7 years. That is what this has exposed for us. So again, the drilling, not a problem. Money in the budget. Just spend the money. Get on with the work. Get on with the job. And that is why now we can get that project going without any coming back to the cabinet to get approval for extra funds, because the money is there. So again, it's just silliness, because we are in the middle of the silly season. but these guys should really know and do better. On this note, now I want to invite our CMO to give her response to the questions posed by Mr. Cornelius.
Good afternoon, everyone. The question, if I remember correctly, when will Ministry of Health lift travel and entry protocols? Now, despite the relaxed attitude towards COVID-19, the COVID-19 pandemic continues. As a federation, as a small island developing state, we have done well with respect to our COVID-19 response. Now, our border surveillance approach, our approach to our borders and how we operate at our borders and how we monitor our borders have done us well in terms of reducing our risk of exposure to the virus. Now, talking about borders, our borders have been open since October the 31st, 2020 to current. And so we have had different iterations of our entry protocols between then and now. And each iteration has been guided by data, science, and the latest information locally, regionally, and internationally. So let's see what's happening locally. What's our current COVID-19 status? The total number of new cases that have been added to our COVID tally over this past week, June 22nd to 28, 2022, is 90. So over this past week, we've added 90 newly confirmed or laboratory confirmed cases of COVID-19 to our tally. The preceding week, June 15 to June 21st, we've added 59 cases. So it goes without saying that there is an upsurge in COVID-19 cases. And it's even more evident if you look at the tile that we disseminated yesterday. We added 30 cases yesterday. The day before yesterday, Monday, we added 27 newly confirmed cases of COVID-19. The last time we saw these numbers or these daily counts was towards the 20th of January of this year, when we were in the middle of wave 4. So locally, we are seeing an upsurge in COVID-19 cases. So the total number of COVID-19 cases reported by the Federation so far, 6,022 cases. We've had 5,876 recoveries. At present, we are now monitoring 103 active cases. It's been a while, it's been a few months since we've been monitoring so many active cases. We are happy and we are lucky that our death toll as a result of COVID remains at 43. So 43 COVID-19 related deaths. Hospitalizations, I need to report to you this afternoon that we have one person admitted at the JNF General Hospital COVID-19 ward, and we have one person admitted at the Alexandra Hospital with COVID-19. Again, it's been a while since we've had any COVID-19 related hospitalizations. It's also important to note that since June the 3rd, 2022, based on CDC's evaluation of the Federation, we are at level 3, CDC's COVID-19 travel health notice level 3. So in the eyes of the US and CDC, St. Kitts and Nevis is deemed a high-risk destination. So that's our current status. Now, as I said, there's a surge in cases locally, and it's not surprising because we've had over 700 mass events approved in the Federation over the last 3 months. The most recent of these mass events is the music festival, which we just enjoyed this past weekend. Now, for music festival or preceding, between June 16th and June 26th, we welcomed 4,402 inbound air travelers to the Federation. So between June 16th and 26th, 4,402 inbound air travelers came to St. Kitts. 54% of these individuals came from the United States of America. If you look at the data there, the US is experiencing a surge in COVID-19 cases driven by the BA4 and BA5 subvariants of the Omicron virus. So the US is our biggest source market. They are seeing a surge, and most of the inbound passengers that came in around Music Festival came in from the US. Some came in from the United Kingdom. The UK is now experiencing its 5th wave. The whole of Europe is seeing a surge in cases. So in summary, there is a surge in the number of cases locally. There's a surge in the number of COVID-19 cases in our source markets. And so the question of change, as I said before, our entry protocols have been guided by data and the latest information. And so it's not wise to make a change at this time. The most important thing to do is to contain this present wave of COVID-19 infections prior to consideration of change. Dr. Wilkinson.
I just want to add my support to what the Chief Medical Officer just said, and just to explain a few things, because we have said all along that our approach has been a life-first strategy, and we always balance the science and the risk that we can absorb, taking into consideration that we have a relatively fragile health system. We know from the guidance that we've gotten from the World Health Organization that they have clearly said that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to this pandemic. And so when persons speak about the United States lifting their entry requirements and why can't St. Kitts do that, we have to take into consideration our healthcare system and our financial situation here. The CMO clearly stated that the cases are on the rise locally. We had 57 cases over the last 2 days, and on a daily basis I get the positive results from the lab, and then we tabulate them. And so far from the information coming into me, we are continuing on that upward trajectory. And these positive cases are not a reflection of the bump that we expect after Music Fest, because those figures will be reflected in another 7 days or so. As it relates to the positivity rate per 100,000 over the last 7 days, we have 144 cases per 100,000. The only countries in the region with a higher rate than that are Belize, Barbados, and Anguilla. And so we are in the midst of an outbreak. Internationally, we know that countries are experiencing outbreak: India, Pakistan, the United States, the United Kingdom. Throughout Europe, you are having an increase in the number of cases. And the numbers that are reported are the laboratory confirmed cases. But we also know that with the popularity of home testing, and the fact that there are a number of persons now who are vaccinated and who would have mild symptoms, they would not present to a lab or to a hospital to be tested. And so the figures are actually significantly higher. Even here in St. Kitts, the positivity rate is much higher than what we are documenting from what we have. We also know too that because of the reduced surveillance in a number of these international countries, the positivity rate that they are reporting to the World Health Organization is actually much higher also. And the pre-testing requirement before persons come into our federation is the last barrier of protection that we have to keep our people safe. the CMO noted the number of deaths we had so far, but no death is an acceptable level, and we need to do everything that we can to protect the lives of the persons here in St. Kitts and Nevis. For a long time, we had no hospitalizations, and she just reported about hospitalizations now in St. Kitts and Nevis. And while a number of persons are walking around as if COVID is over, for us in health, it is not. And not only we are seeing positive cases in the general population, but also among the healthcare workers. And right now, as we speak, we have a number of nurses, both from the main institutions and in the community centers, who are out positive with COVID. We have a number of doctors, including specialists, who are out with COVID. And so what it means is that if we don't continue to act and act proactively, our healthcare system will be under threat. And that is the backbone of every decision that we make. And so while I understand that there are some persons who would like to see us throw caution to the wind, we need to make sure that we're there to protect each and every citizen, because every life is important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and let me, on behalf of the country, thank our two medical experts for the consistency and the excellence of their service to the country throughout this period as we grapple and took on this fight against COVID-19. You have not proven us wrong, and so we thank you and remain indebted to you. If there are no further questions, we have one more. Sorry, there was one? Okay. Minister Phipps will address. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister. If I recall correctly, I think there was a question left unanswered that would have been posed by Ms. Carla Berridge of ZIZ, and it has to do with ECHO. And if I can paraphrase the question, at least based to the best of my knowledge, I think Ms. Berridge was asking what are the steps being taken by the Music Festival Committee in terms of addressing the concerns of ECHO. Was that correct? Okay, and for the benefit of the public, let me explain what ECHO is. ECHO is the Eastern Caribbean Collective Organization for Music Rights Incorporated, and it is registered in St. Lucia. If I am not mistaken, it has been registered in St. Lucia on behalf of the OECS since around 2014, and then it was subsequently recognized and registered through the Financial Services Regulatory Commission here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And to put in perspective the question from Ms. Berridge, up until 2018, if my memory is correct, because please bear with me, I would not have been the minister responsible for Music Festival before the 10th of May. It is my understanding that the regular license fees for the Music Festival would have been paid. And around 2019, there seemed to have been some sort of discrepancy in terms of the billing procedure, etc. There were a number of questions being raised by legal counsel representing the music festival in terms of supplying documentary evidence in terms of the legality of the local group that was representing ECHO. That information, to the best of my knowledge, is provided to me by officials within the Ministry of Tourism and then authenticated by virtue of me being copied on an email for a lawyer representing ECHO, is that the information, the additional information was provided just last week, if I'm not mistaken, Honorable Attorney General. As it is, in a nutshell, what is being requested is that when intellectual property or the music or the songs that have been composed by others would be used on an international, local, regional stage Once that intellectual property has been duly determined to be the property of the songwriter or the composer, and it is used by a third party, it then becomes subject to the payment of licenses. So the same thing obtains if you were to take portions of a book that has been published by an author and refuse to give acknowledgement of its use, or you fabricate it or you plagiarize it, then you have these types of copyright infringements that would come into place. So it is something similar when it comes to music that is produced, especially produced against the backdrop of a commercial endeavor, as is the case of the St. Kitts Music Festival. So what is involved in the process is that when artists get on stage and they play songs, sing songs, or even DJs play tracks or beats from other persons, that they would have to be logged appropriately, and then the license fees would be paid to the producer, to the composer of the music, as the case might be. There is also another side to it when it comes to percentages of receipts being determined insofar as license fees are concerned. So what I would say to Ms. Berridge, and for the benefit of the public, is that now that the additional information that was requested by legal counsel for the music festival has been produced by the requisite attorney, the process of discussion and negotiation would be put in place so that in as expeditious a manner as possible, once there is proper documentation and logging of the music that has been played for the 2019 and now 2022 music festival, the appropriate licenses and other fees will be settled.
We thank Minister Phipps, and we will now hear again from Mr. Cornelius.
Sorry, I had a few questions. I have a few questions from Andre Huey of SKN Newsline, who could not be here today. His questions are, how much profit might Galaxy make from the prison project, and why is this project's revenue not going into the public purse? Why do citizens not get to own the solar power plant? And the last question is, it is alleged that the Prime Minister's brother and close friend Heston Ham got contracts at the prison project. What was the process to determine who works on this project? Was there a public bidding process? And how much business will Galaxy send to Nicola Capital Management and Alfianza? Thank you.
Thank you. I want to make it absolutely clear that Heston Ham is no relative of mine. This kind of deliberate misinformation need to stop. And these are things you don't need to come to a press conference really to ask. We really, with respect, because we're a small community, Heston Ham lives in a small village of Mansion, ask anyone to come to the press conference with these kinds of mischievous questions really make it not so helpful. And the media has to be more responsible, really. These are things you can find out. Yes. And secondly, these questions that are being asked about profit. Well, how will I know? How will any of us here know? It is a private project. Do we know how much is the profit of Park Hyatt? No, nobody asks. Built the same way. Do we know what is the profit at Ramada? No, nobody asks. That is the nature of the private. Do we know how much Minister Spencer Brand will make from his project? No, nobody knows. So why are we to know these things? How are we to know these things? And then this, who will benefit? I mean, on one hand, we are asking about citizens being able to do things. And on the other hand, we are asking about citizens benefiting from activity. There's a contradiction. It's really a political agenda that we are attempting to satisfy. So these questions, in my view, are not questions for here. If you want to know how Galaxy does its business, you go and you ask Galaxy about its business operations. You want to know how much money it will make, you go ask them. You want to know who are the beneficiaries, go ask them. How come we are not asked how much SL Horsford will make or TDC will make from supplying materials? So why are we focusing on small people in the country like Heston Ham, a young man who has spent all of his life, latter part of his life, as a successful businessman, a trained police officer, went on to use that expertise to set up his own security operations. Competently, we are asking about him. He has a right to participate in this space, and he is no relative of mine. How come we are asking about public tendering in relation to private project? You're going to tell a private person who to give? When TDC launched their project up below Jua's area, was there public tendering? So what is new about these things? You're a private individual, you make choices about who you will hire and not hire. So these questions, Mr. Cornelius, though not yours, take that under consideration really, are not questions which we could answer. They are questions that has to be put to the private party. We have no interest in that. And let me make it very clear, as Prime Minister of this country, for all my years as a Member of Parliament, I've had no business except the public business. No business, no private interest has been able to provide a distraction for me. I encourage all those who want to become entrepreneurs to do so. But for me, I am concerned about the public business. Too hard at work focusing on that to contemplate any other thing. I'm a public servant at heart. Live in my hometown. Live in my mother's house. Feel content, not swayed by riches. Not swayed by that. So all these things that people would say, they will never connect in relation to me. I don't have, when I have a cabinet meeting, to recluse myself, because I have no conflicted interests in the matters that are being determined. I am not one of those lawyers who will bring a matter, and when you check it out, their firm has an interest in it. I am not one of those. No private interests. My business is the public business. You can rest assured of that. I think we have no further questions. So we'd want to thank the media for coming today and to thank them for seizing the opportunity to put their questions for consideration. Thank you very much, all who have participated in this very important public accountability session. Thank you again.